Summary of the Confidence Game by Maria Konnikova. People are naturally inclined to believe in things that give their lives meaning and reaffirm their views of themselves and the world. This deep-seated need to believe can make them vulnerable to deception, especially when con artists exploit this vulnerability. This is the central problem the book, The Confidence Game, explores. The author argues that everyone is susceptible to being conned, and that the real question is not if you will be deceived, but when and why. Here's why you should read this book. To understand the psychology of the con, the book delves into the psychological principles that underpin confidence games, breaking down the steps involved, from selecting the victim to covering up the deception. It explains how con artists manipulate human emotions like trust, sympathy, and fear to achieve their goals. To learn how to identify potential con artists, the book provides insights into the traits and techniques of con artists, helping readers to recognize red flags and avoid becoming victims. To develop a more critical mindset, by understanding the mechanics of the confidence game, readers can cultivate a healthy skepticism and become more discerning in evaluating information and propositions, especially when they seem too good to be true. To gain a deeper understanding of human psychology, the book explores broader psychological concepts like motivated reasoning, the sunk cost fallacy, and the endowment effect, shedding light on why people make irrational decisions even when presented with evidence to the contrary. The book, The Confidence Game, explores the darker side of human nature and examines how our inherent desire for meaning and belief can be used against us. By understanding the psychology of the con, readers can empower themselves to resist deception and protect themselves from becoming victims. Introduction. The Confidence Game explores the psychology of why people fall victim to con artists. The author uses the life of Ferdinand Waldo de Mora, also known as the Great Imposter, to illustrate how con artists operate. De Mora successfully impersonated many people, including a surgeon lieutenant in the Royal Canadian Navy during the Korean War. While aboard the HMCS Cayuga, de Mora, posing as Dr. Joseph Sear, performed surgeries on 19 injured Korean soldiers. De Mora's deception was uncovered, but the Navy was so embarrassed by the security breach that they did not press charges. De Mora went on to impersonate a variety of other people, including a prison warden, a teacher, and a civil engineer. The author asks, how is he so effective? De Mora's physical appearance was not particularly compelling, so the author posits that his effectiveness must stem from a deeper psychological phenomenon related to how humans perceive the world. Confidence artists exploit people's trust and willingness to believe. People crave stories that explain the world and dislike uncertainty and ambiguity. Con artists are experts at crafting narratives that make people complicit in their own undoing. They prey on people's desires and use persuasion to make their schemes seem plausible. The book explores the psychology behind each stage of the con, from the selection of the victim to the aftermath of the deception. The author also examines why people are so susceptible to cons and whether it's possible to learn to avoid being deceived. Chapter 1, The Power of Observation. Maria Konnikova uses the story of Deborah Salfield and Sylvia Mitchell to illustrate how con artists exploit their victims' trust. Mitchell, the psychic, was able to deceive Salfield through the power of observation. This ability to size up a potential victim, called the put-up, is the first, and most crucial, step of a successful con. Con artists like Mitchell are adept at observing subtle cues about a person's personality, emotional state, and desires. They are like intuitive psychologists, using the information they gather to build trust and make their victims more susceptible to manipulation. Much of the information we convey is given unconsciously. Even if we think we are hiding our inner turmoil, a trained observer can pick up on subtle clues, like our facial expressions and body language. Con artists excel at noticing these details, and they use this knowledge to create a compelling narrative that draws their victims in. Con artists often target people who are experiencing emotional vulnerability. They look for individuals who are going through major life changes such as divorces, deaths, job losses, or financial difficulties. These individuals are often seeking answers and comfort, which makes them prime targets for someone offering a quick fix or solution to their problems. Once a con artist has selected a target, they begin to build a relationship by mirroring the victim's behavior and interests. This creates a sense of familiarity and likability, making the victim more likely to trust the con artist's claims. This chameleon effect is a key component of the play, which is the second step in the confidence game. During the put-up, con artists will use techniques such as 1. Cold reading, making general statements that could apply to anyone, but seem personalized to the victim. 2. Flattery, complimenting the victim to boost their ego and make them more receptive to suggestion. 3. Name-dropping, pretending to be familiar with people or places the victim knows to create a false sense of connection. 4. False knowledge, using bits of information gleaned from observation or social media to make it seem like they know more about the victim than they actually do. The success of con artists like Sylvia Mitchell is a testament to the power of observation. By carefully studying their victims, con artists can exploit their vulnerabilities and manipulate them into parting with their money, time, and trust. Chapter 2: Con Artists Establish Trust. Maria Konnikova delves into the psychology of the con, exploring how con artists establish trust to deceive their victims. Building trust is a fundamental element of the play, the stage where the con artist cultivates a relationship with the mark. Konnikova highlights several tactics con artists use to foster this sense of trust and connection, drawing on both psychological research and compelling anecdotes. One key tactic is the strategic use of familiarity. Con artists understand that people are more likely to trust those they perceive as similar to themselves or those they feel they already know. Con artists capitalize on this tendency by mirroring their victims' behavior, interests, and beliefs, creating a false sense of connection. This mirroring can be as subtle as adopting similar body language or as calculated as feigning shared interests or experiences. Konnikova illustrates this concept with the story of Tom Jagatic and his colleagues' phishing experiment at Indiana State University. They discovered that students were far more likely to open emails and click on links from senders who appeared to be fellow students, even if they didn't know them personally. This illusion of familiarity can lull victims into a false sense of security, making them less vigilant and more susceptible to manipulation. Another powerful tool in the con artist's arsenal is the appeal to authority. Con artists may boast impressive credentials, drop prestigious names, or associate themselves with respected institutions to bolster their credibility and influence. They understand that people are more likely to trust those they perceive as knowledgeable or powerful, and they skillfully exploit this inclination to gain their victims' confidence. Konnikova cites the example of Ferdinand Waldo de Mora, the great impostor, who seamlessly adopted various guises, often relying on positions of authority to gain trust. De Mora pretended to be a surgeon, a prison warden, and a monk, each time using the perceived authority of these roles to deflect scrutiny and manipulate those around him. Con artists also cultivate trust by appealing to their victims' emotions. They may weave elaborate stories designed to evoke sympathy, compassion, or even fear. By playing on these emotions, they can disarm their victims and make them more receptive to their schemes. Konnikova recounts the story of Ben's Story, a Budweiser Super Bowl commercial that went viral for its heartwarming narrative of a dog's unwavering loyalty to his owner. While not a con in itself, this commercial demonstrates the power of storytelling to tap into deep-seated emotions and create an immediate connection with the viewer. Con artists employ similar tactics, using emotionally charged narratives to disarm their victims and bypass their rational defenses. Ultimately, con artists are masters of social manipulation. They understand the human need for connection and belonging, and they skillfully exploit these desires to build trust and gain their victims' confidence. By understanding the tactics they employ, individuals can cultivate a more critical mindset and learn to protect themselves from falling prey to these elaborate deceptions. Chapter 3: The Classic Tricks of Con Artists. Maria Konnikova pulls back the curtain on the world of con artists, exposing the classic tricks they use to deceive their victims. These timeless tactics, rooted in human psychology and expertly deployed, are the foundation of the confidence game, allowing con artists to gain trust, manipulate perceptions, and ultimately, walk away with their victims' money, reputations, or even their sense of reality. Con artists are, above all, masters of storytelling. They understand that a compelling narrative can disarm even the most skeptical individuals, bypassing rational thought and tapping into deep-seated emotions. One of the most common tricks in the con artist's playbook is the phantom fixation, or the promise of a future reward that is too good to be true. Whether it's the allure of winning a lottery, inheriting a fortune, or investing in a scheme guaranteed to make millions, the con artist paints a vivid picture of a brighter future, luring their victims into a fantasy world where their dreams seem within reach. In the late 19th century, a young man named William Franklin Miller embarked on a con that would become one of the earliest and most successful Ponzi schemes in history. Miller, a charismatic and trusted figure in his Brooklyn community, established the Franklin Syndicate, promising investors an unbelievable 10% weekly return on their investments. This outrageous return, coupled with Miller's assurances of safety and legitimacy, quickly attracted a diverse clientele, ranging from tradesmen to housewives to members of his own church. The scheme began modestly, with Miller asking a group of young men for an initial investment of $10 each. He assured them of their principal being guaranteed against loss and promised weekly dividends. True to his word, the initial investors received their promised returns week after week. This convincer, the tangible evidence of the scheme's success, fueled the syndicate's growth, as satisfied investors spread the word and enticed others to join. Miller's operation grew rapidly. He expanded his office, hired staff, and even began advertising in newspapers nationwide. His promotional materials, adorned with images of Benjamin Franklin and pronouncements of financial wisdom, touted the syndicate's ability to manipulate the stock market and generate incredible profits. Miller's claims of possessing inside information and connections to powerful financiers further bolstered his credibility and attracted a flood of new investors. As the syndicate's popularity soared, so did the sums of money pouring into Miller's coffers. Long lines of eager investors snaked down the street, each hoping to get a piece of the seemingly guaranteed wealth. The frenzy reached its peak when the sheer number of people clamoring to deposit money caused the stoop of Miller's office building to collapse. At this point, Miller was handling tens of thousands of dollars in deposits every day, amassing a fortune that would be worth over $25 million in today's currency. However, cracks began to appear in Miller's carefully constructed facade. Investigative journalists, drawn to the syndicate's improbable returns, began scrutinizing its operations. They discovered that the Franklin Syndicate was not, in fact, incorporated, had no real officers or directors, and was not engaged in any legitimate stock market activity. These revelations culminated in a damning New York Times headline urging investors to abandon the scheme. Faced with exposure, Miller fled to Canada, leaving behind a trail of bewildered and devastated investors. His sudden disappearance sparked panic and chaos, as thousands of people realized their life savings had vanished along with the charismatic con man. Despite the overwhelming evidence of Miller's deception, many of his victims clung to the belief that he would return and restore their fortunes. This unrealistic optimism, fueled by a combination of hope, denial, and the powerful allure of Miller's initial promises, sustained the illusion even as the scheme crumbled around them. Ultimately, Miller was apprehended and brought to justice, but the impact of his con reverberated through the lives of his victims, many of whom never fully recovered their financial losses. The story of William Franklin Miller serves as a stark reminder of the allure of get-rich-quick schemes and the devastating consequences of placing trust in the wrong hands. Another classic trick is the appeal to scarcity. Con artists understand that people value what is rare or difficult to obtain. They create a sense of urgency by implying that an opportunity is limited or that time is running out, pressuring their victims to act quickly without carefully considering the consequences. This tactic can be used to sell anything from worthless trinkets to high-priced investments, as the perception of scarcity overrides rational decision-making. Konnikova points to the example of Victor Lustig, a notorious con artist who, in the 1920s, famously sold the Eiffel Tower to unsuspecting scrap metal dealers. Lustig's con relied on creating the illusion that the Eiffel Tower was being dismantled and that the scrap metal was a rare and valuable commodity. By exploiting the perception of scarcity and playing on his victims' greed, Lustig was able to pull off one of the most audacious cons in history. Social consensus, or the bandwagon effect, is another powerful tool in the con artist's arsenal. Con artists may create the illusion that everyone is participating in their scheme or that their proposition has the support of respected individuals or institutions. They exploit people's natural desire to conform and their tendency to trust the judgment of the crowd, making their victims less likely to question the legitimacy of their claims. This tactic is evident in multi-level marketing schemes, MLMs, where individuals are recruited into a business opportunity with the promise of earning substantial income by selling products and recruiting others into the network. The emphasis on recruitment, often with exaggerated claims of success from those already involved, creates a sense of social proof and encourages individuals to join the scheme despite its often questionable business model. Con artists are also adept at manipulating their victims' emotions. They may prey on people's fears, anxieties, or even their hopes and dreams, using these emotions to cloud their judgment and make them more susceptible to deception. Fear-based tactics are particularly effective, as they can trigger a primal response that overrides rational thought. Con artists may exploit anxieties about health, safety, or financial security, offering solutions that seem too good to pass up. This tactic is evident in health scams, where individuals are preyed upon with promises of miracle cures for illnesses or treatments for ailments that may not even exist. The desperation of the sick and the fear of the unknown can make individuals vulnerable to these scams, even when the claims seem outlandish or lack scientific evidence. Another classic trick involves building rapport and trust by mirroring their victims' behavior, interests, and beliefs. Con artists excel at creating a sense of familiarity and likability, making their victims more receptive to their suggestions and less likely to suspect foul play. They may feign shared experiences, offer unsolicited advice, or even express empathy for their victims' problems, all the while subtly guiding them toward their desired outcome. In her exploration of the psychology of the con, Maria Konnikova delves into the chameleon effect, a tactic con artists use to build rapport and trust with their victims. This manipulative technique involves mirroring the victim's behavior, interests, and beliefs to create a sense of familiarity and likability. The con artist becomes a mirror, reflecting back the victim's own personality and desires, making them more receptive to suggestions and less likely to suspect deception. Con artists who are masters of the chameleon effect are skilled at feigning shared experiences. Offering unsolicited advice that aligns with the victim's worldview. Expressing empathy for the victim's problems. These seemingly genuine gestures are, in reality, carefully calculated maneuvers designed to lower the victim's defenses and create a false sense of intimacy. This tactic exploits our innate tendency to trust those we perceive as similar to ourselves. Konnikova provides an example of how a con artist might create this sense of familiarity. They might pick up on a detail the victim mentions in passing, like a Florida address or an unseasonal tan, and then weave it back into the conversation. By mirroring back the victim's words and interests, the con artist appears more likable and interesting, causing the victim's defenses to drop. Konnikova also highlights the effectiveness of personal contact in creating an illusion of familiarity. She tells the story of Maurice Cerf, a neuroscientist who used to work as a hacker, helping companies identify security vulnerabilities. Cerf emphasizes the importance of gathering human intelligence, or HUMINT, by latching onto information people share freely, even unwittingly. The more specific the information, the better and more believable it becomes. Cerf's accomplice, a researcher, demonstrated how easily this can be done. She would profile potential targets and then use that information to ingratiate herself before making any demands. The ease with which she succeeded is a testament to the power of this tactic. The chameleon effect underscores the power of subtle psychological manipulation in the confidence game. By mirroring our behavior and beliefs, con artists exploit our natural inclination to trust those we perceive as similar to ourselves. This tactic, coupled with carefully crafted narratives and persuasive techniques, can make us vulnerable to their deceptive schemes. While the specific tactics may vary, all con games rely on a fundamental understanding of human psychology. Con artists are experts at reading people, identifying their vulnerabilities, and crafting personalized narratives that tap into their desires, fears, and aspirations. By recognizing these classic tricks and cultivating a healthy skepticism, individuals can better protect themselves from falling victim to the confidence game. Chapter 4: Con artists play on their victims' needs. In Maria Konnikova's captivating exploration of the psychology of the con, she unveils the intricate ways in which con artists exploit their victims' deep-seated needs and vulnerabilities to orchestrate elaborate schemes. These individuals are not just cunning manipulators, they are astute observers of human nature, recognizing that people often crave certainty, belonging, and meaning in their lives. They understand that these desires, especially during times of uncertainty or emotional distress, can make individuals susceptible to manipulation. Konnikova's analysis provides a framework for understanding how con artists identify, target, and exploit their victims' needs, turning their vulnerabilities into opportunities for personal gain. The put-up: identifying the ideal target. The con game begins with the put-up, the process of selecting the ideal victim. Con artists are skilled at profiling individuals, reading their backgrounds, beliefs, and emotional states to identify those most likely to fall for their schemes. They target individuals experiencing loneliness or isolation, financial difficulties, major life changes, divorce, job loss, etc., or a strong desire for quick and easy solutions. These individuals, often seeking stability or a sense of control, become prime targets for the con artist's persuasive tactics. Examples of the put-up. A con artist might target an elderly widow who is feeling lonely and isolated, playing on her need for companionship and financial security. An individual struggling with debt might be targeted with a scheme promising quick and easy riches, exploiting their desperation for financial relief. Someone going through a divorce or job loss, experiencing a period of emotional vulnerability, might be more susceptible to a con artist offering a sense of hope and support. The play: establishing trust and rapport. Once a potential victim has been identified, the con artist moves to the play, establishing a connection based on trust and rapport. This stage involves exploiting the chameleon effect, mirroring the victim's behavior, interests, and beliefs to create a false sense of familiarity and likability. The con artist becomes a mirror, reflecting back the victim's own personality and desires, making them more receptive to suggestions and less likely to suspect deception. Examples of the play. Ferdinand Waldo de Mara Jr., also known as the Great Imposter, successfully impersonated numerous professionals throughout his life, including a surgeon, a prison warden, and a monk. De Mara meticulously studied the mannerisms, language, and knowledge associated with each role, mirroring the expectations of those he interacted with, gaining their trust and exploiting their belief in his assumed identity. A con artist might feign shared experiences, offering unsolicited advice that aligns with the victim's worldview, or expressing empathy for their problems. These seemingly genuine gestures are, in reality, carefully calculated maneuvers designed to lower the victim's defenses and create a false sense of intimacy. The rope: persuading with tailored narratives. With trust established, the con artist casts the rope, employing persuasive techniques to draw the victim deeper into their scheme. One of the most effective tactics is crafting compelling narratives that appeal to the victim's specific needs and desires. This might involve promising outlandish financial returns, appealing to the desire for wealth and security, offering a sense of belonging to an exclusive group, exploiting the need for community, or presenting themselves as a savior or guide, playing on the victim's search for meaning. The con artist's narratives are carefully crafted to resonate with the victim's emotional state, making their claims seem more believable and desirable. Examples of the rope. The infamous Spanish prisoner con, dating back to the 1500s, involves a tale of a wealthy individual imprisoned in Spain who needs help escaping and promises a significant reward for assistance. This narrative plays on the victim's desire for wealth and their empathy for someone in distress. The grandparent scam preys on the emotional vulnerability of grandparents, exploiting their love and concern for their grandchildren. The con artist poses as a grandchild in distress, fabricating a story of an accident or emergency, and urgently requests money. Cult leaders often present themselves as saviors or enlightened guides, offering a sense of belonging and purpose to individuals seeking meaning in their lives. They create a compelling narrative of a utopian community or a path to spiritual enlightenment, exploiting the victim's desire for belonging and transcendence. The breakdown, pushing the victim to invest further. As the con progresses, the con artist introduces the breakdown, a deliberate disruption designed to test the victim's commitment and push them to invest further. This might involve a fabricated setback or obstacle that requires additional funds to overcome, playing on the victim's fear of losing out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, or exploiting the sunk cost fallacy, encouraging the victim to continue investing to justify their previous losses. The breakdown preys on the victim's heightened emotional state, making them more likely to make irrational decisions based on hope, fear, or a desire to recoup their losses. Examples of the breakdown. In a Ponzi scheme, the initial investors receive seemingly legitimate returns, creating a convincer that reinforces their belief in the scheme's legitimacy. However, as the scheme progresses, the con artist fabricates setbacks or delays, requiring additional investments from the victims to keep the illusion going. A con artist might create a sense of urgency by claiming that an opportunity is only available for a limited time, pressuring the victim to act quickly without fully considering the risks. The send is a classic con tactic where the victim is allowed to win initially, only to lose a larger amount later on, encouraging them to invest even more to try and recover their losses. The blow-off and fix, disappearing and silencing victims. Once the con artist has extracted the desired amount from the victim, they execute the blow-off, disappearing and leaving the victim to deal with the consequences. To avoid detection and ensure future success, the con artist may employ a fix, using intimidation or threats to prevent the victim from reporting the crime. Examples of the blow-off and fix. Oscar Hartzell, who perpetrated the Drake estate swindle, convinced thousands of people that they were heirs to a vast fortune, collecting fees for his services. When his scheme was exposed, he fled the country, leaving his victims with nothing. Con artists may use threats or intimidation to silence their victims, preying on their fear of embarrassment or legal repercussions. This can make victims reluctant to come forward, allowing the con artist to continue their operation unimpeded. Con artists are successful because they understand human nature and exploit our inherent vulnerabilities. They prey on our desires for certainty, belonging, and meaning, using manipulation and deception to create illusions that fulfill these needs. By recognizing these tactics and understanding the psychology behind the con, we can better protect ourselves from becoming victims of these elaborate schemes. Chapter 5: How Con Artists Fool Their Victims. If you think back to scandals like the Bernie Madoff scam we mentioned earlier, it might be helpful to alter the questions you ask. Because instead of asking, "Why are people stupid enough to fall for that?" the question you should be asking is, "What makes people gravitate towards con artists?" The simplest answer, as illustrated by the cases of Joan's con artist boyfriend Greg, Deborah Schofield, and the Lady of Worcester, is that people are drawn in by an illusion of success. And while of course, it stands to reason that we'd be attracted to people who seem to be charming and successful, the root of that attraction actually goes deeper than we might think. In fact, our eagerness to believe in a con artist's scheme stems from the fact that people are naturally inclined to be optimistic about the future, sometimes too optimistic. That's why con artists are also frequently referred to as confidence tricksters, because they're able to tap into our inherent optimism and confidence and exploit it for personal gain. A psychology survey conducted in the 1990s confirmed this when it found that all college students overestimated how happy they would be in their upcoming semester by 10 to 20%, including their estimations of how well their grades would turn out, how successful their relationships would be, and the amount of positive experiences they would have. That eagerness to believe that things are going to work out for us is one of humanity's most beautiful traits. But it's also how we fall prey to manipulators. The victims of William Miller knew that only too well, because in 1889, Miller asked each of his friends to donate $10 to his business as startup capital. He told them he could guarantee that his business would generate a weekly return of 10% on their investment, and of course his friends all signed up, with many even inviting others to join in on the get-rich-quick scheme. And because they trusted in their friend and were eager to make more money, they had no idea that these investments had never existed in the first place. Rather, Miller was using each new donation to pay the weekly returns to the previous round of investors. His only aim was to keep this scheme going for as long as he could by recruiting a fresh batch of donors. Chapter 6: Our commitment to our beliefs can hurt us. If it's starting to sound like every possible good character trait can lead you into a trap, that's because it's true. Sadly, each of humanity's most endearing qualities, compassion, generosity, hope, can be manipulated by those who seek to abuse them. And the same is true of our commitment to our personal beliefs. That's because our beliefs, whether they're religious, political, or simply tied to the way we see the world, are something deeply personal to us, and we're not eager to be talked out of them. Con artists know this and often use it for their advantage on the principle that sometimes, when people have an experience that contradicts their beliefs, they'll cling to those beliefs even if it means suppressing the experience. Psychologist Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance can help us explain this behavior. Coined in 1957, this theory suggests that a conflict between our beliefs and reality can be so stressful that we're willing to distort our view of reality so that it can continue to encompass our beliefs. Festinger first began formulating this theory after conducting some research on a cult who believed the end of the world was fast approaching and that only a chosen few would be spared by an alien spaceship. But when the date of their alleged Armageddon passed without the end of the world occurring, so far from giving up their beliefs, the cult realigned reality with their worldview by choosing to believe that their powerful meditation had prevented the apocalypse altogether. And although most of us, hopefully, aren't crazed cult members, the same is still true for everyone. We may not do it consciously, but once we trust someone or make up our minds that the world works in a certain way, we often resist all evidence which disproves our chosen beliefs. Con artists, in turn, use this to reinforce our trust in them and ensnare us tighter in their web. Chapter 7: What's in a reputation? Let's pretend for a moment that you're a detective. You've just solved a major case and earned a significant promotion that's led to you being heralded as the city's hero. That is, until a rookie officer approaches you with evidence of a major detail you've overlooked. The discovery of this information might change the case's outcome entirely. Your criminal could go free, the victims' families wouldn't get closure, and you'd definitely lose your promotion. But the young officer has a solution: as long as you promote him, he won't share this information. Would you do it? According to the results of a survey which interviewed people presented with this hypothetical, you probably wouldn't. That's because our personal reputation is one of the most valued facets of our identity and we're reluctant to damage it. In fact, we care so much about our perception in the eyes of others that psychologist Robin Dunbar's 1997 study revealed that 65% of all conversations revolve around gossip. More than almost any other topic, we're concerned with how other people behave, how we behaved, and what other people thought about it, which reveals that our reputation is one of the biggest concerns in our lives. A good reputation is also, in essence, a shortcut for gaining people's trust even if they don't know us personally, which is why it can be a valuable social commodity. It can also be a great tool for con artists, as evidenced by a highly effective scam from 1915. Around this time, a rumor was started that Queen Elizabeth had an illegitimate son with Sir Francis Drake and that a descendant of this son was now fighting a legal battle to reclaim the money that had been stolen from Drake's ship in the 16th century as an inheritance. Potential investors were promised that anyone who paid to cover the legal fees would be given a share of the inheritance once it was restored, and this potential attracted over 70,000 investors. However, when the promised investment was never returned, not one of the 70,000 victims spoke out. Why? Because each was afraid of being considered foolish for falling for this scheme and feared the loss of their reputation. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and please remember to subscribe to receive notification of upcoming recordings. See you in next video.